Thank you, Senator.
Go ahead and call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the July 10th library board meeting. First agenda item is the election of new officers. We do that traditionally in our July meeting. So I would entertain motions for our new officers.
I move to nominate Ann Malcolm to serve as board president for the 2024-2025 fiscal year.
Second. Great. All those in favor? Aye. Motion approved, so welcome. And I'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah, you can go ahead and do the second one.
Yeah, we also need to nominate vice president position.
Just quickly, who seconded?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion to nominate for vice president.
I move to nominate Betsy Tucker to serve as board vice president for the 2024-2025 fiscal year.
I'll second it. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. So our new board president is Ann Malcolm and Betsy will be our vice president. So Ann gets the pleasure of taking that position now.
Well, thank you, and thanks for filling in for Bunny, and thank you, Bunny. Bunny wasn't able to attend this meeting, but she's done a great job this past year as president, so big shoes to fill. Our first order of business is the minutes for the June 12th meeting. People have a chance to review those. Any additions or corrections? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the June 12th, 2024 board meeting minutes.
For your second. All right. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. It's approved. Now we come to the public comment section of the meeting. And people that are attending on non-agenda items are free to comment. That the board will not be responding to comments, but we do take public comment very seriously. Do we have anyone here who would like to comment? This member of the public?
I believe nobody signed up. We do have people who are about to talk with us in a minute.
Right.
Yes, okay, good.
Okay. All right, hearing that, I'll close public comments. And our first monitoring report under executive limitations is our community involvement report. So Todd, do you wanna?
Yeah, so the community involvement report, as you all saw, it's a long list. And in the past, that's pretty much how I reported it. But really, it's the partnerships we have and getting to understand how that impacts what we do and how it impacts the other agencies as well is important. So we've asked some of our partners to come and kind of tell us a little bit about what they're doing and how that connects with the library. And Liz, if you can help me out and introduce our first round, and I'll get Ryan at that.
Sure. So I invited Shannon Sullivan from the Tower Theater, Rachel Isser from the Kids Center, and Kelly Cannon Miller from Deschutes County Historical Society. They've been three really solid partners, some for a very long time, and others just recent partnerships. So who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Okay.
Do you want to come sit up here? Like one? Okay, I don't know what I'm doing here, but.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm Shannon Sullivan. I'm with the Tower Theater Foundation. I've worked for the foundation for 17 years. I've been there a while. I've worked with Liz on multiple things over the years. More recently, we have partnered on a series called Page to Screen, and we started this 2 years ago. 4 times throughout the year, we'll screen a free film for families and youth on a Friday night at the Tower. It's free of charge. Obviously, we're partnering with the library on that, but we also partner with the Assistance League of Bend on that. And then additionally, we partner with at least one elementary school that's a Title I school. So we really strategically find those Title I schools and reach out to them before those tickets are available to the public. So it can become really a community school event for those families and kids to come downtown and have a Friday night movie. And it's so fun and it's been really successful. We quote unquote sell it out every time we do it throughout the year, and it really is a great event for those schools to take part in. We've served this past season a little over 1,100 families and kids. And with our partnership with Assistance League of Bend, they have a literacy component as well. And they've been giving away free books. They've given out over 2,000 free books since we've started the series. Yeah, so it's been a great partnership, and we are running into our third season, so we'll have 4 more films coming up this next season. And in September, we always run the films in English, but we'll do Spanish subtitles to really reach that Spanish-speaking community as well. But in September, we'll run our first one. We're gonna run it in Spanish and do English subtitles, and we'll partner with Bear Creek and a few others, working with the Benditas and your Spanish-speaking liaison here, Diana, yeah. So, yeah, happy to have you all on board. Y'all do so much great work for the community, and as the tower grows in its community work, and as well as we're growing our education department, we really can see us working more and doing more in the future.
Thank
All right,
you very
Thank you
much.
very
Yeah.
much. That's exciting to learn
Yeah.
about.
Any questions for me or? Okay.
Right, thank you.
All
Yes,
right,
thank
thanks
you.
very much.
I think for effort and time and attention span, I'll go next.
I'm glad you brought a kid with you.
Yeah.
That's really appropriate.
She, when you asked her if there was any public comment, she raised her hand.
I can see.
Stickers all.
My name's Rachel. I'm the Prevention Education Manager at Kids Center. And this is actually very appropriate for her to be here. What I do in the community is provide child abuse prevention education. And the silence that happens when I talk about what I do is indicative of how difficult it is to bring people to the table to even hear about wanting to do something like that and learn something about that. And a lot of it is getting just those words out into the community, in front of people's eyes. And the library has been such a great platform and such a great partner of, when people think about the library, they think about learning, they think about places that are there for everyone, that have so many different options of things to do, to read, to exchange knowledge and ideas. And that holds true with the ability to see our trainings being not only listed as community events, but being put on, having a house, having a venue. And it's been so great, and we're seeing more and more traction of going, because we always track, how'd you hear about this training? Like, oh, I heard it from the library, I saw it on the library website, saw it on, the TVs that are placed in the different spaces. And it's going to be extremely helpful for us, specifically in areas that are underreached by us. We're thinking of South Deschutes County, where it's very difficult for us to step into that space, talking what we talk about. So we're extremely thankful, and you guys have always been a partner with us through National Child Abuse Prevention Month in April, and just kind of shifting into that space just seemed so natural and so easy. So we're really thankful to have a larger platform to get this information out to individuals. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And this one, yeah. Kid,
She's a walking advertisement for the library. Ready? Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you.
okay, have fun.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, you got
all right, Kelly, you're up.
Or to follow the really.
Did you read it?
Yeah.
I've just got numbers, I'm so sorry. So hi, everyone, I'm Kelly Cannon-Miller, Executive Director, Deschutes County Historical Society, which we operate the Deschutes Historical Museum. We have partnered with you guys forever, including, we've had transfer of historical documents from your guys' holdings to our holdings over time, but you guys, some of your board members might not know that in 2017, we actually won an Oregon Heritage Excellence Award together for our use of oral histories as audiobooks. So we have a long track record and we love working with the library. We adore the staff. We're always able to throw creative ideas at them and they'll be like, yes, let's go do this. And we always have a great time working with the staff. We've had community librarians on our board as board members as well. So I see this as one of our top most fruitful partnerships that the museum works with on a daily basis. But we did something new this last couple of years. It's like, okay, there's a Heritage Excellence Award. How do we top that? Let's actually start doing an exhibit together every year and tie in with the novel idea. And so this was our second year hosting the novel idea exhibit. We actually gave it a proper name this year that we can keep going moving forward, that every year there will be the read/create exhibit that encourages people to read the novel idea book and then express that book through an art form. Right now, it has traditionally been quilting. But we've seen it past novel ideas. People show up with paintings and I'm thinking of the dog from Dog Stars, that there was a painting of. So we're hoping that it can grow and that, there will be other art forms that people will bring in and submit to this event. So just for the numbers game part of it, this year's exhibit, we had 438 visitors through the 6 weeks that it was up. Plus, we had an event day while it was up that brought in 280 visitors on that day. We had 64 people during the 6 weeks use their library pass to get in for free. And we knew they were there to see the exhibit because they would announce themselves with their library card and say, where is it? And we're like, second floor, right in the stairs. So it was another great exhibit. It's always fun to not know what's going to come through the door for us to put on the wall. And that's always great. So thank you very much for partnering with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and then we have Ryan McCrone, and I'm really excited to hear from Ryan. He's with Changing Patterns, and this is coming to us through our library program. And I think you'll be as excited as I am to hear about a really innovative program you're going to do.
Yeah. So Changing Patterns is a local nonprofit. We assist returning citizens, people getting out of the incarceration system, navigate the barriers and obstacles of reentry. We have a mentor program that takes individuals and we connect them with a reentry navigator who is a peer support specialist. And we have them go through a 10 to 12 week program that is developed off of Frank Patka's book called The Returning Citizen Survival Guide. So your great law librarian, Jennifer Peterson, found that book in one of the community libraries and contacted us, I think about probably 9 months ago, and asked what we were all about. And we've actually done a couple events at the East Library where we've had individuals who come in who have people who are family members who are incarcerated and they want to know how to best help them coming out. And so we've had a couple of those, and right now we are doing our a weekly every Monday from 6 to 8 at the Hutchinson Room. We're inviting anybody who has been recently released from incarceration to go through that program with us as a group. So the program is developed off the book. We help guys and or girls, women, set a personal commitment, triage habits, set a routine around those personal commitments and habits, have a healthy support system to get them through that, and then connect them to the essential resources here. I created a low-cost free activity handbook, which the Discovery Pass is in there. And so all of our guys do have a library card and do use the resources that you guys offer. And we're really excited. We do have the Hutchinson Room for another 7 weeks. And then we have a break, and then we're gonna do another 10-week thing. And it's really awesome because me and Frank have a workspace at the Haven. And taking a whole bunch of people up there is not ideal. And so having them here at the library is great, because it's kind of in the middle of everything and super easy to get to, especially for public transportation. I could talk on forever, so I'll just leave it there. But yeah, changing patterns, inc.org, if you guys want to check us out online. And yeah, we'll be having, any questions? Yeah.
How could we refer or give information to someone who may benefit from this program?
They can find us online,
Okay,
or they can contact us through the Inside Out Network,
Okay.
which is a platform for incarcerated individuals to find resources in the community. It's being piloted in Deer Ridge and Madras and at Warner Creek, which is down in Lakeview. But ideally, they would go on our website and then they can email us or give us a call. And anybody who, we'd like to work with people who have just been recently released, like within a year out of prison or within 30 days of county. Just because it's really important for us to get to them first before they go back out to their old habits and people. But anybody can call us and we can definitely help them.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have a board meeting right now. Can I
Okay.
go to that?
Sorry, your consideration.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good day, and yeah, please reach out if you guys have any questions or how we can help.
All right, thank you. Thank you to all our partners. That's very helpful. Highlighting our community involvement, just kind of get a little taste of what we're doing now, because now, and like you think of that very long list. And just imagine that every single connection we're having there, it's really, really powerful to see what we're doing in the community, and not so much what we're doing, but what we're doing with other people. And really expanding what we're able to do. There's no way that we can reach as many people as we do without a lot of help. Thank you so much.
Is that list represent just the last fiscal year?
I should caveat, it represents the last year and it represents what our staff could remember. So I have a feeling that if I had a really complete report, this would be a lot longer. But I figured you got the picture from what this comes with. I'll also highlight that the report does start with what I'm doing. Because that was a request in the past from the board to separate that out specifically. I am not trying to rob anybody's glory here, because they're doing way more work than I am, connecting with the community.
Do you ever use this list to be like, we're missing this group? Or, to look for holes or filling gaps?
Yeah, as far as, there's a couple of different areas. A big piece of it is the programming we do, and I don't want to speak for you because I know you guys are constantly looking at what haven't we done. And so I'm assuming that it's a big piece of that. I do know for our community librarians, there's very much target where they're trying to reach. They have specific areas of the community that they're trying to reach. And so we're constantly kind of analyzing who's missing, where else can we go? And as you can imagine, as we partner with people, you learn something more. The changing patterns is a good example of Jenny's been doing a lot of work with the law library, but heard about this organization and started in it. So, Liz or Chantal, do you want to add anything to that?
I think, the Jenny situation, a lot of our really fruitful partnerships and collaborative partners really sort of happen organically. And it's really such a great use of both of our time and resources. If they've got something they're already doing, they just need they need our space, or they need our platform, our megaphone that can be so big. And so a lot of times these relationships start out as mutually beneficial, sort of expeditious way to get our work out in front of people. And then they turn into something so much more. Yeah. That's working.
So my analysis of the monitoring report is that we are in good compliance with that policy.
Okay, are there any questions for Lisa Chantal, Todd? Any questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to find that the library is in compliance with the executive limitation policy 3C.
So second,
Second?
discussion? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Okay, next up, that's always an exciting report, I've gotta say. I mean, and I like the fact that we're highlighting these partnerships because it really shows. It's just a glimpse into the myriad things that are happening in the buildings and outside of the buildings that we don't always get to hear about. So, thank you. Next up, I think we have John Grade.
And I just wanted to introduce, I think you all have met Kate. Kate, you can stand up or wave. We have Kate O'Kagan here, and Kate is the co-chair of our art committee for all of the buildings and has been a tremendous help. John is logging in at 6. I'm guessing he'll be 5 minutes early, but I could put you on the spot. He can talk
Or we can come back
or come back.
and have a great start.
Oh, yeah.
So Todd doesn't want me to say anything.
If you want, I thought maybe you could do that when, after John,
It's on.
if that works.
Sure.
Sorry.
We do love to hear from you.
Of course we want to hear from you.
Well, good evening, and good to see you guys. Yeah. So, run through the report and talk about that. The, probably the biggest thing that we worked through this, and finished up this past month was the master development schedule. Really updating that and republishing that, and that tracks all of our projects. And, so the report's been updated, the summary box with the dates that are in there. The most significant change, of course, was with Central Library and where the completion of construction and ultimately the opening date pushed out. And that was driven by when we got our building permit and were able to start. And we really worked through a bunch of things with Kirby Nagelhaupt to say, is it really feasible to accelerate and, eliminate that impact to the project? And, as we went through it, none of us were real confident of, hey, we can cut that time back out of the schedule. And in part because of the complexity of the building, the size of the building, and just, you're right at the start and it's like, oh yeah, let's just lop off a month and a half. And we really didn't think that was prudent. As they analyzed a bunch of different scenarios, talked to their subs and what was going on with the design where we were at. And so as we finished that up, that's where we looked at and said, okay, what's that gonna do? We hit some key target dates. Right now, they'll complete construction in November of 26 or 25. So that we can start our FF&E at the beginning of December. We were going between late November to almost late December, then finishing. And so they were able to mitigate some of the time and get us back to where we, how we go through the holiday season, because that's always a challenging, but that was the most significant change. Now it has an equal impact on downtown Bennett, because downtown Bennett construction follows Central's opening and, the movement of all the people and getting everybody reset up in Central. So it did shift out. Those were the two biggest changes. Sun River is marching right along into the finishing stages here. They're wrapping up, installing the shelving right now and finishing up the last construction issues. And They're gonna start putting books on the shelves in 2 weeks, week and a half, actually. And so with the opening still planned for a soft opening here in August and then grand opening out in September, I think is current planning. So that's moving along with the, no real significant concerns. Redmond is marching along, very comfortable with our opening date. We've got some construction work that is gonna stretch into August. It'll overlap with some of our FF&E work, shelving. And because we have one primary FF&E vendor, the shelving contractor, they could easily be coordinated with Kirby on that, dealing with some stuff. And it was really driven by some value changes that we made that precipitate some of this work occurring concurrent. And then we have some exterior landscaping work that's gonna be going on, but still overall, when you look at it, big picture, how is it going? I feel like it's moving along really well. That, like I said, no expectations of any impacts to what the condition of the building will be like when staff moves in to prepare for opening and for the opening date there. I did note on here, that East Bend, we've taken that off and kind of wanted to make sure we just documented that as that decision was made and what steps we're taking. So, in the report, that's the biggest thing that went on was relative to schedule. We are working through a major budget update and analysis, similar to what I've done, a couple times a year. And so that should be completed the end of this month, and so you'll see that next month at the meeting of where that goes. And things like, with East Bend, that changed, that's an influx. We're getting a lot of information on reports on the investment portfolio and what's going on there, and so that'll all be updated. But a number of those things, we'll go through all of that. One of the things that kind of goes with that, we're starting to look at SunWest's contract. And so they were the CMGC for work package 4, which was the branches. And now that we're not gonna have them do any work on East Bend, Sun River becomes their final project. And so we'll start, and we've already started the process of final closeout of their contract. And when we selected them, we put them under a single master contract for the branches, and then accounting wise, we track each of the buildings. And so one of the things I looked at is that as we did authorizations, we did them building by building. But their contract is combined, and I'm gonna reconcile their final contract as one whole. And it'll have a summary of what's happening with Sisters and what's happening with Lapine as well as Sun River. And so it's just something as we started working through that, is I thought, I wanted to let you know that that's gonna come up, and it's really just a summary of what was the final accounting of all 3 projects. With Sun River being the last one to complete, it has the most additive costs, because there are some things that we're having them do right now down there where we relooked at some of the existing conditions of curbs and landscape and things that we're trying to save, but when we looked at it, it's like, it's really bad, it needs to be cleaned up and fixed, and the funds are there within the contingency there, so it's not anything that's a real buster, but it's something that's just a little different. I don't think I'll have that for August, but it'll probably be out in more like September as we wrap up all of their contract.
And does their contract, the contract we have with them, allow us to eliminate a part of the project that was planned originally?
Yep. And so, because we paid them for the work they've done to date on it, and then if we had them do more, we would increase that contract value. But it does give us the option to basically terminate that piece at any point. So, it's really kind of it on the budget side. There's a few of the, procurement things that we'll run through, and maybe we'll do that after, John does his, presentation. I think the other parts of the, report are pretty standard. Hopefully you were able to look at all of the pictures and they opened up. I, added some stuff in that the developer gave me from, Central, just so that you could see what was going on. They're making incredible progress on the street work. And plan to have 27th Street reopened here this year. And well in advance, because it's a condition of our approval to operate with that street has to be open. And so they'll have it done more than a year in advance. And I drove by their development today and the first two homes, the foundations are poured and they're getting ready to start framing. So they're building homes, right? It's like what's gonna be great about that community because that's really gonna take off. They have a lot of sites prepared. And I'm sure these are the model homes that are going up and their builder will be getting going as they start to sell these. Any other real questions about the report?
I just need a reminder what BIM stands for.
So it's
You
building.
need it in context?
No, it's building, I always want to say information, but it's not. Building integrated modeling
Yeah, he was in there.
Yes,
and
okay, great.
yes,
And KNCC BIM, modeling and procurement.
yeah. So what that is the contractor, in this case Kirby, it's a computer system. So the architects they design buildings in what's a model. It's a 3-dimensional model. It's all computer generated. They don't really draw plans at all anymore. Most of the young guys couldn't print. But so they create a model for the building and stuff, and then they export that to the contractor, and the contractor and their subcontractors take and do a more detailed level of modeling. And really, when you think about what's above the ceiling, right? There's a ton of piping, ductwork and all of that. Here, it's underneath us in the floor on these, but they detail out where every pipe's gonna run all the way through. Often the building plans are somewhat more diagrammatical, like for electrical circuits, they say, here's an outlet, and they show a little arrow that says, go to panel PL. Well, they draw every conduit, and they figure out, well, how are we gonna put everything in there? The subcontractors also use that information to fabricate stuff offsite. You know, all of our structural elements were modeled, so the ALDT planks, all of the mass timber, structural steel, they took out of the model, generated their shop drawings, which are used for review and approval with the design team, but also literally given, they're called shop drawings because they're given to the manufacturing shop that builds it from. And that all comes out of that model. And it is a really powerful tool that they use.
If you want to get an appreciation for it, when we look at the Redmond Library and the mechanical room, there is absolutely no way that room ever could have been designed without this program.
Yes.
There are pipes going all around and in a very small space that it's just, every time I see it, I'm amazed that
It's
This work.
so efficient and, yeah, like you say, it couldn't have been done without.
yeah.
And
So
all of those pipes are assembled off-site and brought in sections. And in the old days, it was like Tinker Toy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Box of everything and took one piece and they would sit in there for weeks on end. And now they come in and build these things.
So when we do the Redmond tour, don't let me forget the mechanical work.
Yeah, because it is really interesting, but not so pretty.
Yeah.
You'll really see that.
Very cool, yeah.
Okay.
We have John here.
Yeah.
So we can come back to you. I'm just gonna hang out. John, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and let's see, can somebody hit the lights? Oh, great. Whoops, I just made you smaller than I wanted. There you go.
Well, it's nice to be with you all.
Chantal, do you want to introduce John?
Yeah.
And what are you supposed to do?
So on the screen is artist John Grade, and John is the artist for our Redmond library as well as the Central Library. And his work is amazing. I can't say enough, but what I'll do is send you a link to his work so you can get an idea about it. It's featured in the Seattle airport and museums all over the world, so. Okay, John, that's really fast and dirty.
Thank you, Chantal. Shall I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. And are you all seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, I thought I'll spend about 10 minutes just giving you an overview of the sculpture and the ideas behind it. But I thought before I did that, excuse me, I would just give you this little animation of the Redmond branch sculpture, just so you can all recall that. Because part of what's so exciting about the sculpture that I'm presenting to you is that it has this sibling relationship, that we have a sculpture, as you're seeing here in the Redmond branch, that has really, for me, compelling ties to what I'm presenting for you for the Central Stevens Ranch branch. And you might recall that this is based on two different sets of inspiration, primarily a cross-section of a humble sagebrush, and then also this lava landscape that's very unique to your particular area there. We're running ahead of schedule. We're somewhere between 60 and 70% of the way finished with this sculpture right now. And I will send some progress images to Chantal, who could share them with you if you're interested in just seeing what it looks like as this piece is being made. So on to the sculpture at hand for today for the Central branch. There are really three focused points that I wanted to get through that are most important to me about the kind of the why of the sculpture. The first is the two central points of inspiration, and it's taking this idea of retreating glaciers locally, specifically from South Sister is the one I'm looking at for the actual form for the sculpture, and then also expanding juniper populations. So this idea of expansion and contraction coming together as a form that overlays into the sculpture. And then the other piece for me is it's very simple. It's how to create a sense of wonder. And part of that is going to be through scale and complexity. So the sculpture is about 45 feet wide and 25 feet high and 35 feet deep. And it's trying to do that through a sense of immersion and focusing on a changing landscape. And then finally, and this is a really important part for me, is that the sculpture is going to have a component to it where the community will be invited to directly participate in making it. And so they'll be working on one aspect of the sculpture, which has to do with these clear polymer folded shapes. So it's almost like a very elaborate kind of origami. And the other reason I wanted to show you the initial sculpture is we're hoping that we can set up pop-up locations where people can work on the sculpture. And one of those pop-up locations would be directly underneath the sculpture at the Redmond branch. And I think that's a kind of a beautiful idea where you see a finished sculpture and then you get a sense of contributing to the next one that's coming along. So a couple of images. This is the Skinner Glacier on South Sister. And what I became excited about was thinking about the relationship between the glacier and the landscape that it is scouring, that it's changing, that it's retreating from. So what would it feel like to be underneath that glacier, and specifically this glacier on South Sister? There's we can, I think, all imagine what goes on as that glacier slowly creeps along when it's both expanded and now contracting, and what that's doing to the landscape specifically. In the case of South Sister, the area that I've been studying most closely is where the water has been flowing from the tongue of that glacier. And so it creates a kind of valley-like form, which I'll show you, and it'll become really clear when you see the sculpture rendering. So beyond the contraction piece and toward the expansion piece, I'm very sure you're all aware of how much juniper has been expanding in the region here. And I thought this was a really nice explicit way of looking at a single ranch about 100 years apart and just seeing how much the juniper have covered that landscape. Part of the specific field study for me in looking at the juniper, a lot of it was in the Badlands, so just east of our site at Stevens Ranch, and then further east into the Lost Forest. But also Horse Ridge, which hopefully a bunch of you know, that's the oldest juniper I've been able to find in the region, this 1600-year-old Western juniper that there's the image of here. So a bit like the sage sculpture, what I'm looking at is the cross section. So we see these growth rings, but in a very different way. Instead of seeing these growth rings as we are here, where you have a very level cross section, imagine taking the landscape at the point on South Sister, the topography, and how complex the topography and three-dimensional it is when making this cut through the tree. So you have a much more dynamic cut. So hopefully that becomes clear when I show you this animation. So the idea here is to take these growth rings and connect it with a kind of a topographical map and how those two things can kind of define a landscape in two different ways. So this is about a 1-minute animation of what the sculpture will look like in the branch itself. So similar to the other sculpture, this is made with Alaskan yellow cedar. And you have these long continuous rings, that outermost continuous ring, probably about 220 feet long. And you have a series of cables that are suspending all of these floating parts. They've been enlarged just so that you can see them here. So these are rendered at 4 times as large as the real cables will be. So the cables will be very subtle, but they're also going to be a design element. So they're running along areas where rivulets of water would be collecting as it would cascade down this landscape. So that's just one subtle piece. In this point in the rendering, you see how it starts to move right up against the wall of the space and toward one of the beams and pillars. Now, one of the more subtle aspects you're seeing here is this polymer, which is floating just an inch above the wood components. And this is referencing the glacier itself. And to make that is that origami process with the polymer I was describing. So that's where people in the community directly participate in making the sculpture. So they won't be helping with the wood. For just really pragmatic purposes. There's a lot more to deal with in terms of the wood, but it's, I think, a much more approachable process to have people building the glacier form aspect of the sculpture. And here we're seeing looking straight up through the sculpture. So a couple of stills just to kind of comment. So you have this second floor landing vantage and just a couple of practical things. None of the sculpture is in a position where it can be reached by any of the library patrons. So all of our distances are vetted so that people aren't able to do that. That said, everything is suspended and part of what's going on in terms of the suspension that works for us structurally, this is a view from the 3rd floor vantage, is that if you do move a piece, it will simply sway and bump into its companion piece. So seismically, this is an important part of how to make this structurally work. So instead of trying to imagine it all maintaining a rigid structure together, during a seismic event, everything sways and moves and bumps into itself without falling down on anybody or hurting anybody. This is the 3rd floor vantage coming down from that landing. And this is about the closest you would get to being able to almost try to reach out and touch the sculpture. So I think that's one of your more intimate views. So the way in which this is put together is with many, many little joints that have magnet connections. So of course I can't come in there with 200-foot long, complex curved carved wood, but instead you're going to have these series of magnetic connections, which won't read visually, but what that does is it allows us both to come in and install it. But if there were any issue into the future, you can come in and remove sections of the sculpture to access, say, to change a light bulb. Or if we simply, for some reason, needed to remove the sculpture at some point, it's something that could be removed. And I think this is a nice sense of how you're going to get there's a translucency to the glacial components that also kind of extend a kind of opacity when they're backlit from the skylight. So I think a lot of the light that comes pouring in from the skylight will filter through that aspect of the sculpture, and I think it will actually amplify a lot of that luminosity that we're getting from natural light. So this is we've kind of blocked out those glacial forms. They almost look like wings here, if you see in the white. So just to give you a better sense, I think just it's hard to read that part of the component just in the animation. And the entire weight of the sculpture is actually under 2,000 pounds. So it's a really lightweight sculpture ultimately for its scale. And this is a diagram that shows you where we have these small light fixture accesses. So we'll actually be incorporating where those magnetic connections are so that you can move aside sections of the sculpture that we think are most likely areas that we would need to access. And then I'll just give you one last run through with the animation, so you can see it one last time. Also, this is up. I can send you a link if anybody would like to look at the animation at a later time on your own as well. Does anybody have any immediate questions just as we run through the animation one more time?
I have a question. I'm wondering, is each ring separate from the others?
Correct, yeah.
Cool.
So there are a couple thousand suspension points, and the cable is actually only a 32nd of an inch cable. So it's stainless steel aircraft cable. And I think it will either be invisible to you based on how I've treated this with past sculptures, or it might read as like a very fine rain. And from certain vantages, you'll start to see how lines of the cable line up if you're looking for that. So I think you will also, as you get currents in the room, you'll see some very subtle movement in areas of the sculpture as drafts of air move through the space. I think it'll be pretty subtle, but you will get some of that. I will stop sharing my screen. Anybody else have any comments, questions, concerns?
No, thank you so much.
Yeah, comments that, or Kate? Well, hi, John, this is Kate.
Oh, hi, Kate.
Yeah. I was just talking to Matt the other day, and he was saying that that you're working very diligently with him with the fire codes, but also to make sure that the sculpture will be able to enter the building.
Yeah, very fundamental. You know, when I was a student, when I was about 20, my very first large scale sculpture was too large to fit out of the school studio door. So that was a mistake I learned early. Try not to repeat.
Thus the genius of the magnets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, all I want to say is it's been a delightful process working with John. This is a huge investment for the library to make, but it falls in line with what we're trying to do in terms of the art having some characteristics of inspiration, of being able to last and inform, endure over the ages. To be compatible, in this case, certainly with the architecture, and also be of great interest and accepted by the context, the location, the people who are going through the library, all generations, all ages, well, that's the same thing, isn't it? And, you know, and everyone can appreciate something about this piece, and yet it is not just your normal concept of a sculpture. So I think that it's going to be, it's going to be a major contribution to the library's art collection, as we are calling it. And conceivably, everything in the art collection can move from one branch to another. But I think, John, you're pretty, even with that,
Yeah.
the custom piece for that location.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, for me, the work is it's so important that it's very specific to the site and to the community. And I think that the idea of getting hundreds, even thousands of people within the broader community there to help work on the sculpture is a very, very meaningful part of this. The idea that even if you come and spend 1 or 2 hours, I've done this with past projects, and it's really beautiful to see the sense of ownership, to come in and imagine the library. You're going to have a couple of people describing to somebody that's visiting in town how they actually helped build that sculpture. So I think that for me, that's a really critical part of all this.
I love that aspect of it. I can just imagine people coming in 30 years and saying, and I helped make that, you know, these are just beautiful, beautiful sculptures. So thank you for your attention to what makes Central Oregon special. And I think these are just gonna amaze people. They're
Well,
incredible.
They're sort of visual representations of how I'm falling for your region so deeply. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions for John? Okay, thank you very much for taking the time out. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you all looking at it with me.
All right.
So shall I go ahead and sign off, or would you like me there for any longer at this point?
All right, you can sign off. You're probably,
Yeah.
probably good.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
Thank you.
thank you.
Hopefully it's okay in the heat. We've got a lot of heat over here too, but I think you might have more than me. All right, take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, and just for point of, we will be discussing this as part of the approvals that we're going to give with Greg. So we'll have more discussion around that.
Yeah, and if there wasn't any other questions on the report content or that, I didn't want to rush away from that. I didn't really talk about the design status and spelled it out in there. It's just kind of plugging along at this point, nothing hugely dramatic.
Yeah, we're going to start on
Yeah,
Central Library,
yeah,
KNCC.
yeah, the UD amendment. I'm sorry, I was busy looking at the report.
That was how I wrote it.
I thought I had something written on it, but I think it regards this, so,
No.
yeah.
So this is the final amendment for Kirby's GMP for Central Library. And it really sets the full GMP amount, and we broke it up into these different phases just to really fast track the project along and get to this point. The final round of bidding, had really good participation and interest from the subcontractor community, which was beneficial for us. You know, we got good pricing, we're in our budget, so there was no real shockers that were there. We have a good group of subcontractors that have bid it, you know, in that they're well qualified. We're attracting the companies that really need to work on a complex building like this. And some of them are local, some of them are throughout the state. Predominantly all Oregonian companies. So that was kind of nice to see also. So keeping the work within our community. And so, you know, the summary goes through and really breaks down what the costs are and how that's all set up. It tracks to their contract, their GMP and that. So I don't know if there was any particular questions that you guys had. To give you a sense, the hard cost budget set aside for this was $87,500,000. And which did not include pre-construction services, because we had that as a separate, so it came in right at budget. The contingencies and the dollars built in were anticipated costs, so as we went through, we were able to tell them, you know, think about this, think about that, make sure we've got that covered to where we're not gonna have to increase the GMP in the future that we've anticipated. The things that we've learned on other projects and anticipated, we had a lot of really good final dialogue with the design team of where's the design at, what's coming up. They've anticipated as much as they could, plan check comments coming from the city, so that we have some budget dollars set aside in there to deal with them. And that was really helpful to have collaboration between our design team and Kirby to really talk about that and make sure Kirby understood what the design team was dealing with the city on plan check comments and to make some allowances for that kind of stuff. So that way, as we finalize our permit, hopefully we won't have any big surprises. And it, you know, in big picture view, which is part of the budget analysis that we're going through is we always carry an owner's contingency separate from our design for owner requested changes, for the surprises that could happen in a project. And still to this day, of course, we've not had to touch that. And so, which really makes me feel good that, okay, we're going into construction with 100% of all the contingency dollars. And normally I would expect to have had to release some of them to cover some overruns. And so I'm very fortunate that we did have to do. So this brings the authorization level up to what would be Kirby's full GMP contract.
Are there any questions for Greg about this? Were there areas that increased, I mean, above what we thought they were going to be? Because I mean, obviously there's flux in budgets
Yes.
where things come in lower, things come in higher.
Yeah. So within those line items, they go up and down.
Right,
Truly, there was some of those, nothing, like shockingly way off. Our millwork package, which is quite extensive, if you can imagine all of the millwork that goes into, a project like this. That one was higher than, they had estimated. They carried the estimating contingency in their estimate, which helps offset that. That was one that went up a fair amount just as we got, and that was part of why they waited to bid this work out as late as possible to allow the design to get as complete as it could. And to make sure they really captured the essence and the scope and quantity there. So that was the one that was probably the most significant increase that was out there in this amendment. Most of the others were, you know, they would be up and down, but not overly extensive.
right, it is, so I mean, I'm looking ahead to downtown. Whether the budget numbers for that are holding based on what we're seeing for central.
Yeah, you know, I think one, you know, Kirby is our CMGC and they've really taken a lot of the lessons learned and knowledge of what the design is like, what the design teams put into it. From Redmond, from downtown or central into downtown.
Right.
And we're going through, you know, we've set up a budget for our construction costs and it is holding right now to that budget. We're going through a budget review currently. And we'll have an update definitely next month on how that sits. But that's one that we're in an early stage of refinement of scope to really look at all the things we want to do. We have a very long list of optional alternates, especially around the MEP systems, just how much we're gonna remove and replace based on the age of the building. So But no, there are really good lessons learned coming out of this. I think the other is Kirby has just that much better of an understanding of what Miller Hall Steel are doing as designers, you know, especially early on. The designers live in their design world, and Kirby, there our estimator, Randy, who works for Kirby, and he's really good at conceptual estimating. I see the little line, but I know that line means they're gonna want this, this, and it, you know, and he's gotten to understand what the final design is probably going to look like that he needs to anticipate in cost. So.
Any other questions? Not, I would entertain a motion on the GMP amendment.
I'll go ahead. I move to authorize the library director with signing authority up to $87,815,201 for the KNCC Central Library Construction Contract through GMP Amendment 4.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we're back to the artwork procurement.
Yeah, so John's piece there, you know, as he put together his proposal from a design standpoint, he also puts together a cost proposal on it. And the cost is $900,000 for everything that you saw there, and then putting that together. And so that's the request tonight, is approval of that, so we can actually issue his contract to move forward on that. That fits within our budget. You know, the district has a policy to spend basically 1% of our construction value on artwork and stuff. And so we've always carried you know, a good, healthy budget, and knowing that it was gonna be around a $90 million budget, we set that early on, and to make sure that there was ample funds in our art budget. And so this fits well within that.
And if I may, I think this might be a good time for Chantal and Kate to kind of give us a little sense of kind of the overall picture of our art.
Right.
And also maybe talk a little bit about the fundraising we've been doing to help support that as well.
Yeah, if it's all right with you, I'll just stand over here.
Yeah,
great.
I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about the process, but there will be a time when people will ask, so who picked it? How did it happen? You know, the scrutiny happens after they go, what is this? And you know, they start asking questions. So I just want to tell you that it is a pretty sophisticated process, multiple screening levels. The big screen is we go through an international service based in the US called Cafe. It's an online resource for artists to apply to projects that are going on all over. And we were also fortunate enough that several members of our committee already knew John. So we also have the option of reaching out directly to artists anytime we want. So there are multiple ways to reach artists. And we do press releases through the library, and we want to make sure that the local artists do have at least a second look, hard look. We are wanting to make sure that the local artists are represented in the collection. And so to that, we don't tip the scales, but we do give them a special look. As you can see with John Grade's work, there isn't anybody in this region that can do that. And there was a real reason for doing works of that scale at this point. You can see that the bar has been really set. You can also see that the Miller Hall architecture and the John Grade artwork are really in harmony. And I think that's really important. I want to say that there are many, many opportunities for art of a much smaller scale in the library branches, but the branches really are taken up mostly with the work you do, which is the books and the collections. And servicing people services. So the objects, the qualifications that we're looking for are artistic integrity, proof of ability to deliver, in structural integrity, engineering, all of that all goes into the mix. But it's also, aesthetically, do they rise to the level? And we also have other criteria of the context, so the location. Where is the building? What is the building? Is it a renovation? Is it new construction? And who are the people who are passing through? Who are the community members? Who is going to be looking at this? And then third is cost. And John does represent a big investment, but that really is, as I said, sets the bar, sets the tone, honors all the investment that the community has made in this work, and really is a great way to give back something truly significant. And so I think that's all I want to say. We're also talking about fundraising. We have the 1% that is dedicated to art from the construction budget, but then also there's ways to augment that for additional as we go along. So just to reiterate, this is where we are right now, but we're also looking at multitudes of other artists for other spaces. Our focus is for those really on diversity. And so I know that there are questions about that from staffs, like where John is white, so just I want to you want to rest assured that we are working on that in a concerted fashion. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. And just in terms of fundraising, so the Library Foundation, I think you all know, it is running a capital campaign for 3 core areas. One is art, and we're trying to raise $1 million for that. And then the early learning area, which we're trying to raise $5 million for that. And then the lead, which we're raising, let's say, doing that, $3 million for that. So those are the 3 core areas, and we've done one fundraiser for art specifically, and it went really well. It was at a local person's family's home, the Taylor's home, and he did an amazing job. He did this like times 10 to them, and so there's a lot of interest now in the caliber of art that we're bringing in. And people are talking and sharing with their friends in Arizona and California. We've gotten some really good feedback. We're doing a second fundraising event in the end of August. And it will again be focused on art, but also early learning to bring that in. So just know that your commitment to it, the 1% commitment from the library is huge. But we need more, we want more, and we want to do a lot more for our communities. So. Yeah.
Can you give us a little foreshadowing on what to expect for Sun River?
Yeah, so Sun River, we selected a local artist. Her name is Judy Hoynes. She's lived here probably 55 years. She's a really well-known painter, and she likes to incorporate 3D objects, 2D into her paintings. And another criteria that we had like as a philosophical criteria was some kind of connection to the natural world. Because we are so connected to the natural world in this region. And obviously John is very much that. But so is Judy Hoynes. She has spent her life studying, working with animals. She's very, very passionate about that. So in the painting that she's designing for us, it's gorgeous. The colors are beautiful. She's been really careful of going down 3 times, looking at what we've chosen with architects for the colors in the building. She's incorporated those. And then she's really thinking carefully about the animals who roam our region. So from coyotes to even a wolf, and she wants to push the boundaries a bit on that. Another kind of core element is we do want the art to be somewhat provocative so that we get people thinking from all different perspectives and reflecting. We don't just want just it to be pretty once and then go away and they figured out what it is. So in Judy's work, you're going to look at that painting many times and see a lot of different things. And that really interests us too.
I just wanna say too, the committee's also approved a sculptor named, Santigi Fofandura. And so he will be, I guess he represents, it's hard to, I don't know what we do in boxes, but a diverse addition to the collection, and he has not been contracted with yet.
Not yet, but we're working on that. He has visited the Sun River site. And he's excited to incorporate one of our historical markers into his sculpture. He noticed that right away and said, may I use that? So we've given him approval to use that. But yeah, we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm getting that it's a broken piece of concrete.
Yeah.
Historically. It's the Camp Abbott pillar, if you may have seen, it used to be right by the front door when you came in.
And I have a question, speaking of art in the libraries, that I received this morning, actually. What's the plan for the piece of artwork that's at the East Library? Where will that go?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That piece is done by an artist named Troy Corliss. And of course, the East Bend branch is a leased space. And of course, with the, we've got the Stevens Ranch Central Library coming online. So with that knowledge, we had a need for artwork in Lapine and a very restricted budget because it is 1% of the Lapine renovation. So we are going to be moving the Troy Corliss in the middle of October, from the East Bend branch down to the Lapine branch. And the committee member that represents Lapine, Tony LeBone and Kathy DeBone. Kathy DeBone is on our committee and she is thrilled.
That's her #1 favorite artist, so that was good.
She found him on a trip to Sacramento and some big building, and so she wanted to make sure that we knew about it, and I said, as a matter of fact, we already have one. And he is, in terms of budget charges, he's one of the, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollar commissions. So we're lucky to be able to put that piece
To work.
again, right?
Great, thank you.
And it's wonderful that he'll be so involved in the movement of it, so we can make sure that it is moved according to
Yes.
his standards.
We'll figure it out.
Right, and I can remember when it was installed, that they really worked hard on the installation and.
So if anybody's really good at going up and down ladders 1,000,000 times,
Yeah.
Careful.
yeah.
We're really excited to have that in the Pine, especially if
Yeah.
being in the Pine, it is a very white
Yeah.
space, and we'll be using the main area. And it's really gonna add some amazing color to that building and stuff.
Yeah.
And the staff there is really excited to get it out.
And one small detail too, in the sisters branch, we hired a fabric artist named Krista Kuhn from Ashland. And this is an example of how the designers and the architects and the art can work together to solve a problem. There was an acoustical need to dampen the noise sound in the meeting room. And so rather than just do the wood slats, we have, thanks to Robert and his installation crew, there's, the huge, what is it? I forget, 30 feet long.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
a 30-foot long piece of felted fabric, multi-dimensional, that is both beautiful and also helps dampen the sound. So I just want to let you know that the committee is looking at all these aspects all the time, working with the team. The team's been fabulous.
And again, that connection back to the natural world. So this felted piece represents the Metolius River and she has like glistening fish. You can barely tell, but it's there and really.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it,
On the road.
go and check it out. And it's incredible.
And same with Troy Corliss, it's leaf glass art, but it leaves and branches. So the more you think about it, like
Yeah.
it's very much steeped in the natural world, which is great.
Work on getting some very unnatural things.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion on the artwork procurement.
I'll move to authorize the library director with signing authority up to $950,000 for the Central Library's artwork contract and change orders.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
I think one thing I would mention, some of the other artists that we talked about there, their contracts fell in existing authorization. They're small enough that,
Right,
so
right.
I end up bringing you the bigger stuff.
Yes. Okay,
Shelving is next.
Shelving.
So this is the Central Library shelving package, which is with our shelving vendor, Space Saver Specialists, and it's the metal shelving as well as all of the millwork and all the components. And we spent a lot of time on really refining the shelving design. When we finished our building design back in January, we were at 100%, and we continued with the shelving because there's a lot of elements of lessons learned and how it can used, what we're tweaking and changing at the other branches. And I don't believe that will stop, because if we find things, it houses the most important thing, right, in the building. And I've been told that. So it's one that we do spend a lot of time on, and even when you'll see on the authorization level, I asked for a little bit higher level than their initial contract, because I am anticipating we're gonna make some adjustments and tweaks, as we look at how it's fitting in the building, how it's being used, what has really been learned on the other branches. We've learned a lot from the small branches. We're gonna learn a whole lot more from Redmond because it's such a different dynamic. And the types of shelving, there's more types in Redmond that are directly related to Central. And I think that as it gets built and installed and librarians in there and putting books on, and then we see how people utilize and circulate, and that could drive changes. And so this is some we'll get going on this, but we really have almost a year and a half. They would start installation the 1st of December of next year, so for them to manufacture and get it ready. So that gives us a little bit of time to live with Redmond here this year into the opening. They'll start their manufacturing process next summer to be ready to have it all delivered to us, but there's a lot of pre-planning up front they'll go through. So the cost proposal, right now for the contract is the 2,383,000, and then the request is at 2,500,000. Any questions?
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
All right, I move to authorize the library director with signing authority up to 700,000, oops, wrong one. 2,500,000 for the Central Library's shelving system contract and change orders.
Second, Dan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, so Redmond early learning components.
Yeah, this one is some modifications that we made. I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Redmond, that we made some adjustments, and some of it was into the type of wood that we are using to build things. One of the materials that we really planning and contemplating to use on both the early learning as well as some of the components that Kirby has built. As we really looked at it, it became evident that it wasn't a durable material and more susceptible to damage. And it was like, this isn't what the library wants. And so there's, probably a few more reasons than just that, but as we implemented that, this is the cost impact here. And our last authorization level really had it right at their contract amount. And so while it's a small amount, relative, you know, it's a $28,000 increase, it still was exceeding the current authorization level. And so, I set it at the $700,000 level. That does give us a little bit of room for minor changes, which I would expect that as we move into it, we'll find things that will ask them to adjust and tweak. Yeah, I think that's really true, the custom nature of the early learning components. And as we learn things on one branch, we're changing and adjusting some of the others. So, any questions?
Okay. Motion,
I move to authorize the library director with signing authority up to $700,000 for the Redmond Library's early learning components.
okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Passes. Thank you, Greg. That's a lot of things. Get through them. Okay, so we have resolution authorizing signatures. This is for new officers, so we just have to sign this and give it to you, or?
What you have to, approve the resolution.
Okay,
But I do want to highlight a few things. Based on our discussion last month about changing the way we do checks, I had our attorney look at the one we've been using, and
Right.
they came back and said that was out of date. And so a couple of things happened. One, they updated this, it has all the correct ORS statutes, which is
no,
great. But in that, we discovered that ORS specifically says that the board president or designee will review, kind of like we were doing with the check signing. So
oh,
We-
really?
yeah, so we're still trying to figure out what that means. So we're not quite out of the woods yet as far as going to a monthly piece.
I think in the short term, we may be looking to,
Yes.
get back onto the weekly schedule, so we may do some last minute reach out to board members for availabilities.
Is that for like a special district or
No, it was,
certain size agency?
that's a good question. This was based on, I would have to go through the ORS statute to see who they're targeting in that.
We're gonna have a
That one.
follow-up conversation with legal just to get
Yeah,
really clear on this. I think we were operating under those old guidances in the old document. So this kind of unraveled some of our underlying assumptions. We need to recalibrate with legal.
yes. And the other piece was, this is kind of as far as legal go, and then I had the similar questions as you, and they sent me to special districts
Right.
to talk with, their accounting consultants, so, and their attorney, who I have not heard back from yet, but I also realized that I'm not getting emails right now.
Yes, we're.
So I may have heard back and not realized it. So anyway, more to come on that one, but we are required to do this no matter what. This is what we use, especially when we go to the bank and talk about who has authorizations. So this will be an important one for us. And we will fill in the names of, Malcolm as board president, and then each of the board members. On this.
Designees, yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I move to adopt resolution 23.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. She passes.
not on the agenda, but we should probably point out, we were assuming that we were gonna be doing some of this. I don't know. You might, I don't know if you're having.
Yeah.
What we might wanna do with the checks that we had, or maybe it's just that I sit down with Dan and go through the warrants.
I can stay and go through the warrants.
Yeah, and I'm happy to
Okay.
be there as well for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll just do it the old
Don't
fashioned
leave
way.
it for your vacation.
Yeah.
No. Okay, yes. So that's, thank you, we're done with.
Okay, all right, well, we need to get the check signed.
Yep.
Okay. Tell us about Sisters.
Yeah.
Robert.
All right, everybody. Well, sometimes I come and I talk to you about buildings, and sometimes I come and I talk to you about finance. And today is one of those rare occasions I get to talk to you about both because it was an insurance claim. So, I will start off by reacquainting you with where we started on Wednesday, January 17th.
Warning, this may be traumatic.
Yes, content warning. I did get a little bit of PTSD myself, watching and compiling all this information. So let's see if the video works for us here. I'll give you a little bit of background. We got the phone call early that morning because SunWest Builders had come onto site ahead of opening in order to get a couple of hours of work in order to close out a couple of the open action items that were remaining from the construction punch list. So they called me. I knew that Zoe was out on sick leave at the time. She was very sick. So I knew my report, our operations manager, was on her way up to try and get things ready. So I give her a call. She's on the road. She goes, I'll be there in 15 minutes. And 15 minutes after that, I get this video. And it's a little hard to come through, but all of that is covered with water. There's SunWest Builders with push brooms and handheld squeegee on pole, pushing as much moisture and liquid as they could. It's very difficult to see as the video is going quickly, but you see past the ceiling. Yeah, the ceiling is raining at this time. The ceiling, you see water through all of it. And I'll show you a picture in just a sec where we can see kind of how far it all extended in. So the shock set in and then people took action. And so this is kind of how things went over the following 2 months. You can see that picture there where the water's just extended all the way out into the children's area. And so the very first thing that people did, and this was a combination of SunWest Builders, DPL staff, we were able to get a demolition and remediation company on hand that day. So all of that team was able to move as much as they could out of the way because thank goodness we had all of our shelves in this area on wheels. So everything got rolled out. We said, all right, we're gonna take our time and look at you in a sec. Now back to the room. So we got everything out that we could, and then spent the next 2 weeks stabilizing conditions, performing that initial assessment, figuring out what was dry and what could go into storage while we took care of everything else. And some of that storage was offsite and some of that storage was on site. If any of you were in Sisters at the time, one of our new meeting rooms was packed from one side to the other with as much as we could put in there temporarily because we wanted things on hand, but we didn't want it just out on the floor. We wanted to reopen, which thankfully happened in quite short order. So by February 1st, we had restarted curbside. By February 7th, less than a week later, we had the unaffected half of the building reopened with a demising wall set up as a safety barrier and also a bit of a noise barrier. Not as much as we could hope for, but as much as we could get as they ripped out the floors, and I'll show you a couple pictures of all that, pulled out the ceiling tiles, and then did their overall like run through of what's damaged, what can be dried out with those floor dryers were everywhere for weeks. And so during that period in early February, we wrapped up demolition and we started working with SunWest Builders who had just completed the new renovation. So they had all of the trades and all of the material specifications. And we said, well, we want it exactly the way you just gave it to us 3 months ago when we had the grand opening, please. And they really did rise to the occasion. If you have, well, no, we did it last month, we were there, but if you have another chance to go on back there, I challenge you to take a walk around and see if you can tell what's new and what's not. I feel like they did such a great job of just blending everything and really making it feel like we didn't lose what we just gained in that building. All we lost was the time that we had to do the work. And in the grand scheme of things, we were able to get the entire library reopened in just a little over 2 months. So just fantastic work on all sides. I'll note that in this corner picture here, the last one that says March 22nd, you can see a little indication of how that artwork that we talked about extends past the projector screen, so that even when a presenter is talking, that material is providing some acoustic treatment. Well, as you might imagine, with all that moisture and a brand new, beautiful one of a kind art piece, that was one of the things we said has to get out while we do all the other work. And of course, we want to make sure it didn't get damaged, it didn't absorb moisture. So after we did that assessment and felt that it was good, we had the moving company come in and develop custom crates. So we had to pull it back down off the wall in 3 separate panels and get that crated up, along with all the other things that came out. The early learning carts, all of the shelving had to come out, the ones on the walls. So because the walls we needed to make sure were dry and clean, and some of them had some issues we needed to take care of. So everything came out and was safely stored and came back in. So jump right to the best of the good news, because that was already good news that we were able to reopen. Well, now here it is, and it is 6 months later, but 6 months later and all costs fully covered by district insurance. So I will take a 6-month wait to find out that we did not actually sustain additional expenditures, incur additional costs that were not planned for, because insurance was able to cover the claim.
That's great news.
Yeah, and this gives you just a little bit of a breakdown. So the things that are the large numbers are where you might expect it. So demolition was quite costly because they had, people in there for probably about 6 weeks. We were running those fans that belonged to them. They were the ones doing the initial moisture assessment to figure out what was not drying out quickly enough and would pose a long-term kind of health risk, so that we can make an informed decision about what needed to come out and what that scope truly ended up being. There were a couple of places that were a little bit on the edge. Initially, we saw, it got a bit wet. Once they started drying things out, they came back in with their meters 1 week, 2 weeks later, and things had dried out sufficiently that we didn't need to go past the kids area into the adults, go into that meeting room where we had a bunch of stuff tucked away, go into the bathroom where we had saved all of those tile and kept them in place. And then we were thinking, oh man, we decided long ago we weren't going to touch it, and we might have to rip it out because that floor got wet. But it turned out everything was okay on those edge conditions, and we really were restricted just to those 2 rooms. All told, $181,000 in costs, which seems like quite a lot. It certainly is quite a lot if you're not anticipating this kind of an event happening, right? That's a major chunk of my overall buildings management budget for the year. But in the grand scheme of things, there are elements that never made it onto this list because it didn't get damaged. Shelving did not need to be replaced. Books and collections didn't need to be replaced. All of those new expensive early learning carts and early learning pieces didn't need to be replaced. There were a couple of cosmetic damage areas where they were able to repair it and get it back in place. But so much of that damage was limited because of so many people coming together quickly, decisively, but also thinking with consideration every step of the way to figure out what's the right decision. So this is my not complete, but certainly the ones that came closest, quickest to mind of people that I am very thankful for how they helped us to limit the extent of the damage and get us back on our feet so quickly. Sunwest Builders got in there the day of and limited that damage, and that made a tremendous difference. Those couple of hours between when they got there and when staff was scheduled to arrive were so critical. Plus, they knew where the water shutoffs were, where our supervisor was out, and our operations manager, she knows all that, but she was like on the way and coming into a crisis. And they had just turned the water back on just a few months ago, so it was like fresh information. Oh, and by the way, it was in the middle of a gigantic ice storm, which meant they had the Bobcat to scoop out all the snow and ice so they could even get to the box. We would have had to drive up a team with shovels and get a bunch of people around there to get in there, and that would have been more time lost. So that plus getting us back on track and getting everything back into that brand new state. Here's another picture of that beautiful art installation and just this room, and this is after all of the repairs are done, so everything's just back in place. But really, the thing I wanted to point out here is just a thanks to Greg and Greg's team at Red Point. We had them every step of the way on something that was outside of the scope of our building constructions and was this other thing. That they also had all of the knowledge and wherewithal, just like Sunwest Builders, where we had just done this. And they knew how to coordinate it and get us on our way. They knew how to reach out to the moving company and just get this added on to our agreement with them and get them scheduled and making sure that we just had that same kind of assurance that we've had during the construction for this reconstruction. Here's a neat little picture of the demolition in progress where they had to tear all the way down to that subfloor. So this is a special thank you to Special Districts Insurance Services. They gave such assistance and support. Any relationship with an insurance company is always going to be a little bit of push and pull, but working with special districts, ultimately, like they do have so much experience working with other districts just like us. And in fact, we're working claims from dozens of Oregon special districts, because we talked about it the very next month at the Special Districts Conference. They were working through a lot of cases, and they helped us work through our case pretty quickly in the grand scheme of things. All right, we got those early learning cards back in, and we couldn't have done all of this without our staff for being so flexible, for their commitment to continue services in any way we could, given where we were at on any given day. Are we ready to reopen? No. Can we get staff into the staff room? Staff room wasn't flooded. Can we start doing curbside? Yes. Okay, then let's get that started. Next week, okay, well, we can't open the whole building, but can we get this going? Can we rearrange and get displays looking right? Just so much flexibility and just a really positive attitude through the whole thing of working with the community to get the community back into their library. And of course, our community, our library customers and the people of Sisters who were so patient while we had to stay closed, who were patient when the day of they're coming to the door with the books and they're seeing a bunch of people pushing water out the door, who were right there as soon as we announced that everything was back up and running and we're in the space again, checking it out and letting us know how happy they were things were backing up. So many parts and pieces. Now, there are a couple of questions I wanted to address, and we talked a little bit about this. This is a bit of an eye chart. It's really more for me to make sure that I just kind of keep all the information straight as I talk you through it. But obviously, the question that was raised when it first happened and we've continued to really investigate and dig into is why did it happen? So the long story short is that I don't have a definitive answer, but what I can talk you through is like how you get to a point where an unexpected event like this happens. So for us, it was a renovation, and any of these renovation projects we've learned as we've gone, you have to make dozens of judgment calls about what to leave in place and what to replace. And this is one of those that landed somewhere in the middle. The water line fed an outdoor hose bib. That hose bib was going away. So we made a decision as a team with the architects and the contractors and us to cap that hose bib and leave the line in place. That line had been in place for 20 plus years. Yes, it was up through the attic. We'd never had any problems with it. Okay, I mean, why mess with something that we don't need to? Well, something in the condition for that line changed. Now, there were a couple of things that I can tell you I know changed. One was that we capped it and before it was a running hose bib, but it's not like we opened it and ran a drip line or something in the middle of the winter to keep it from freezing. So that's a tough one. The other question that got raised was, well, look, did something change up in that unconditioned space? And the answer is maybe. We put in more insulation. We made the building more energy efficient. Is it possible that the attic was colder because the building didn't leak as much heat? Maybe. Maybe not, right? There are several other of these unknown or even partially known changes that change something about the overall operation of that pipe. Maybe water wasn't circulating the way it did once. Maybe there was some other pressure change from something further down the line. What we do know is that that the immediate cause for the pipe burst was that it was in an unconditioned space. So that's to tee up this next question, which is, okay, so you fixed this, you recovered. What's your confidence that this won't happen again in either Sisters or any of our other buildings? So coming out of the lessons learned in the immediate aftermath, we asked SunWest to take us through, and we did our own investigation as well of the drawings to see, were there any other plumbing lines, any other water lines that ran into unconditioned spaces? And while there were no other lines that ran through attics, either at Lapine or Sisters or Sun River during renovations, what we did find was that in a couple of places in Lapine, we had fire sprinkler lines that were going into rooms that don't have HVAC, there's no ventilation from HVAC. So with the door closed, the room could get extra cold in the winter. These were both rooms that were like right at the outer edge of the building. So one is the exterior book drop. And the other one is the closet where we store chairs and tables off the community room. So in both of those cases, we couldn't remove the fire sprinkler line. We couldn't add more heating, like add ventilation to that room, but we could add more heating. So we asked them to install cadet heaters in both of those rooms. And at this point, we've got confidence that even when conditions get really cold outside, those rooms can still be kept just above, above that freezing point. So those are all the questions I could think of. Those are the big ones, but there's probably a few more from you.
Right, I just say you missed one slide, and that is the ones that you did. That was an incredible job, and reiterate what you said about the staff. If you ever want to see somebody in action, check out Lynn in a crisis.
Yeah, right.
She can figure out in 5 seconds how to conveniently switch and figure out how to run a building. Here's your limitations. She'd be great at math.
Yeah.
Lots of help. The collection development librarians too. Especially Cheryl. And she can shove furniture like no.
Yeah. Yeah, she was there with you that day.
Yeah, we were there.
What's wet, what's not? That's not, roll it out.
Yeah, no, thanks to everybody for such hard work and what a great outcome. I mean, that's excellent.
Now that we've approved all the shelving systems, are they all on rollers?
That is a good question. So the answer is many are movable shelving units. There are a few in some of the larger buildings where it's kind of a mix of fixed and mobile shelving. Off the top of my head, Redmond doesn't have a ton of it, right?
No, well, what I was gonna say is what's actually helped a lot in Sisters too, even the fixed shelving, is the bottom part is metal.
Oh, yes, that does.
So the bottom parts are metal, and so they're up about maybe 4 inches, 5 inches. And even so, there's no end panel that is touching a piece of carpet.
Yes.
And that's what also saved the shelving, even around the perimeter that was fixed, was because it just went and hit the metal and it went under and got into the carpet.
That's a great.
It never went up until the shelving. So, yeah, that's a really good lesson learned.
Yeah, no, we.
Exactly.
I can tell you that putting the shelves on wheels we never planned for this.
Yeah.
It was more so we could shift things around as we wanted.
Yeah.
That was helpful, but yeah, that middle shelving, we were actually down in Sun River today, just looking at that, saying that's what also saved our bacon.
Yep.
Really good.
Hey, quick question, the glass partition,
Yes.
what happened? Was that able to stay in place and
Yes.
they worked around that?
Yeah, so one of the things that was a big question that came up initially was, well, listen, like the water came from above. So are there any structural issues with that frame that's kind of like the rail upon which everything rests. So they got up in there and they did a structural analysis and determined that not only could we leave it all in place, but we could kind of work around it even for the carpet and flooring. Yeah. Yeah, there was a small section of carpet right under the bottom rail, but because we were able to cut away and remove everything around it, they got so many air dryers on those spots, we were able to dry that up.
Good work.
Quick work on all parts,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
I appreciate that you thought about your other buildings as well.
yeah.
You kind of went through that exercise
Yeah.
to consider what other surprises you could come across.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of that gut check moment where it's like, well, we did not expect this to happen.
Sure.
What other blind spots do we have? And while you can't really identify all of your unknowns, at the very least, you can ask yourself, are there any conditions like this one that we could at least get ahead of it and say, okay, maybe that would never be a problem, but we could also help, right? Mitigate.
Pretty cheap fix too, to
Cadet, walk
reduce the
cadets.
risk, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right,
Thank you.
okay, I guess we need, no, we don't need to do anything.
That was just an
Yes,
informal,
that's,
yeah.
I was gonna say. No, just all good news. So Todd, do you have more news for us?
No, I think that covered a lot. I do want to highlight that, we are still into summer with the library. And, that's kind of where all of our activity is focused right
Mhm.
All right. And Betsy, do you have any foundation news?
I did, but Chantal
Yeah,
said
it's-
word for word what I was gonna say. The event in May was incredible. The artist attended and he was an amazing advocate. The next event is in August. And then we did some housekeeping stuff. So there you
Great.
go.
Okay.
now. You feel, Anne's pain. I think that happened to you a lot.
Yeah,
So you would always steal your thunder.
Yeah.
On the occasions when I would actually
I know.
write things down, it was like, I'm ready. But more often than not, I would ask Chantal to bail me out, so, yeah, it's a good system. So, okay, any critical communications from this meeting?
I did not. No, I think we're in good shape.
Okay,
Yes.
and self-review of the meeting. Erin, do you want to start?
Sure, I just had one question, about the board work session.
Yes.
Is that happening on August 9th?
No.
Or, okay, so the Zoom link is not for August 9th.
No, we had, sorry, thank you, that I did have news. So the August 9th didn't work, we're trying to schedule a new date,
Okay,
so we don't have that yet. I will say in all likelihood, it's going to be a work session with possibly 4 board members. We're just not finding a date where I can get all 5 of you in the room. One of the things that I really want to focus on with this work session is to start looking at our results policies. And my goal is to have us really make sure it fits for this board. And I think it's time to kind of revamp them. Part of that is being driven from staff as well. We're really struggling trying to tie our strategic plan to the results policies. And I think there's a connection there where we can help each other. So that's a piece that we really want to start working on. So and that may be a multiple work session process, just if we start scheduling these and we can't get all the board members, what I expect is we're gonna start making some progress, share that with all the board, and then probably come in and it might take us a couple of times to revise these. So right now, Lori is looking at further out. I think she's looking at some dates in September. She's trying to coordinate also with the facilitator, Margaret Helpian, that we want to work with. So stay tuned for that. And then the other piece of that is fair warning is what I would like to do is start slowly peppering you with some readings, short readings, maybe a page or two, to get us in the mindset of what kinds of things might we want to consider as we're looking at these. Some of them will be directly relevant, some will be tangentially relevant. But I just want to give you a warning before I just started shooting stuff. So stay tuned for that.
Good question. And so as far as my self-review, I loved hearing the reports from Shannon and Rachel and Kelly and Ryan on the programs and just how exciting those opportunities are for collaboration. And congrats to Anne and Betsy for your new positions on the board. And fantastic news on insurance fully covering those costs and the teamwork to get everything back up and open in 2 months. That's amazing.
Betsy?
Since the first person usually says all the things, I'm just gonna hijack this moment a little bit to report on the conference that I went to last week, 2 weeks ago in San Diego.
Seems like so long ago.
It was really very lovely conference with a ton of sessions to go to. I tried to hit all of the board member sessions, which were very interesting and informative, and I'm trying to like not drop a whole list of things that I think we should do on your lap, but you know, in passing, I'll share some stuff with you at some point. One of the sessions, what had to do with the Beaverton Central Library, partnering with the Beaverton Police Department's bike patrol to address some of their homeless issues that they were dealing with at their library, and that was a really cool session. One of my favorite sessions was listening to San Diego Library's conversation around their LGBTQIA+ community engagement and all the work that they've been doing, which is huge, and it's a very central program for their library, and that was really exciting to hear about. There was a session about book bans that was really interesting, and I think my biggest takeaway was to know what intellectual freedom is and have an elevator pitch prepared to share with anybody that I talk to. So I've been practicing it on everybody at work when they ask me, what was that? And I ask them, do you know what this is? And they all say no. And then I go into, and I mean, it's just even a few sentences that I have to say before they completely engage in the conversation with me. And that never happens with any of the other conferences I go to, or like the GFOA conference. So that was my key takeaway, and I've been, I thought that was a really cool thing to bring back. So, thank you.
And Trevor knows.
Oh, and Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah was there. I was gonna say that, but I don't really follow him. I know he's a big deal, so I'm gonna go watch his show or his old show. I don't know, is he still on that show?
No.
Okay, well, I'll go watch it anyways.
Was he one of the keynotes?
He was the keynote, the opening, yeah, and he was really lovely to listen to. His thought process and the things that he cares about were really insightful and inspiring. Yeah.
And I just want to say, I really look forward to the community involvement report because I really think it highlights what the library system is in our community, all the partnerships and just everyone that the library impacts. So this is the one report that I really look forward to each year. And it was really nice to hear from the partners. Yeah, from firsthand, so.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on Betsy and I sent out a little mini, I mean, it turned out to be a maxi report, which is just pretty much a regurgitation of notes that I was taking constantly in all these sessions, and it's just a fraction of the sessions that I went to. I concentrated a lot on intellectual freedom sessions. But one of the really cool sessions that I went to was one on from makerspace to marketplace, and it was Fayette, Arkansas Public Library, and they did a huge expansion in 2021, I think. And as part of this, they did a makerspace and they focused it, they said, oh, you know, the public came in and they wanted to do all the 3D printing of multi-sided dice, and everybody, you know, all the gamers were really into that. And they said, well, you know, really, we built this space for more. So they have a program that takes people with an idea for a business or a product and takes them from conception through to prototype development and launch. And they do 3 cohorts a year, and they've started all these little micro businesses. And it's really, it's informed what they have in their space. And they covered all the issues that I'm sure we are facing in liability and who do you hire and all of those things. But they had a real focus to it, and it's still very community oriented, and the people that are engaging in this entrepreneur program are coming back and teaching public members what they've learned. And it was a really great example of partnerships with their economic development people, with colleges in the area, and it's just launching a whole bunch of people in new economic areas. Yeah, so you can read the report, but a couple of Trevor Noah quotes, which he's the type of guy who's very funny, but there's so much substance underneath. And he said, if you insist on shielding others from ideas through censorship, you put them in your own prison, which I thought was good. And for parents, censorship creates barriers between your child and the world that they will come up against.
Oh, I remember him saying that.
Yeah. So I really appreciate the opportunity to go to these conferences, because Betsy and I were talking, we came back with more questions than answers. So we'll probably be driving Todd crazy. But it really does stimulate a lot of thinking about what is possible and getting to see great examples from all over the world, really. I would encourage everybody to take advantage of this and go to the next one. And that's all I've got. And I think that the meeting was really productive. It was good to see us move through important procurement items, and thanks again, Greg, for your clear explanations. And like Ann, I loved this meeting just because a lot of the things that we talk about have to do with money and, you know, moving things forward, and that is our job as a board. But it's also really wonderful to hear the great things that are going on in our libraries, which we don't get to hear about as often. So congrats to all the staff, and thank you for all the hard work that make these partnerships possible. So
I do, one other thing I wanted to let you know, the state of Oregon has set a new law that board members have a required training, and it's around public meetings. And that started January 1st. And the reason you've heard nothing from me is, as the state will do, they set that, and then they said, and we'll have a training for you later. And I've been waiting. Special districts got on the ball and they immediately created a training. But the state has, in their wisdom, has said that doesn't count. So, because they have a very good training that would meet all the requirements. So the last I heard was the state still hasn't come up with their own training. So I just want you to be aware that at some point in the near future, I will have a training, it'll probably be an online training for you. Also, special districts, the insurance side gives us discounts if we meet certain requirements each year, and they change them every year. And one of them, and well, they do it on purpose so that we'll do different things. And one of them is board education. And there's a couple of courses that if, I can't remember if it's all 5 or if even just one board member takes it, we'll get a 2% discount on insurance, which is a significant amount. So in the near future, you will hear from me. It's an online 90-minute online training. And it's through a program Special Districts has. It's pretty easy to log in. We just have to get you set up. So when I do send that out, before you panic, Lori can help you through the entire sign up process and make sure you have all the authorizations to take a training if you wish to do it. So just know that I'll probably have something out in the next month about some training opportunities.
And they're good trainings. I mean, they're online and so you can go through them quickly, but they do have really pertinent information that we should know about.
Yes, yeah, they do a really good job with the training. And I would also say, as part of the self-review of meetings, my job as secretary is to tell you how you've done with the Carver model. And you've done very well with the Carver models. A big piece of that is focusing on the high level piece, without micromanaging into specific things for the library. And I think you do a great job of keeping it at that level. I also want to highlight, I really appreciate the community partners coming. We had a lot that were excited about doing this, so I had to turn some away this year. So I know I have some more coming. But for me, that's really important because it really highlights all of these reports and the annual report we do. It kind of looks like, because I'm presenting it to you, that I'm saying, hey, I did all this stuff. When you all know full well, it's a huge number of people that are doing some really important work. And this is a great way, not only to highlight the partnerships, but highlight what our staff needs to them as well.
Okay, well, with that, I'll declare the meeting adjourned.
Reminder, next month, we're meeting in La Pine. And just to give you some foreshadowing, we're gonna go over management practices monitoring, and then Rhea, who a year ago came to us with a grant about healthy walking communities.
Yes.
It's going to share results.
Oh, good,
Okay, good.
very good. And thank you so much for dinner.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
Thank you.
yes, I sat here feeling very guilty last month because I watched everybody starve,
Yes.
including me.
Is that something that we will have every month?
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna ask you. November. And maybe easier to plan December.
Yeah.
Right, so, but I'll be in Norwood in September, so that.
You were.
Okay.